Remember, in just a moment from now, I will play out for you the first and exclusive interview of the Hathras victims' family. They've been barred from speaking to the media. Their phones have been taken away from them. The media has been held out, not being allowed to come into Hathras as if this is some kind of an abode of terrorists. Why should their phones be taken away? Why are their phones in surveillance? Why are family members' phones being tapped? We look at all of that. But I want to show you what happened in and around Hathras, Bhulgadi today. You had local leaders, you had leaders from the Trinamool Congress trying to come in, being pushed, shoved. Yesterday we had Rahul Gandhi falling, today Derek O'Brien took a fall. And they weren't allowed to go in because supposedly the SIT is investigating, and because their investigation is going on, nobody else is allowed into Fortress Hathras. The government tried to stop us, the police tried to stop us, but we penetrated. I will show you that interview in a moment from now, but before that, here's the day's big story.
Netas blocked. Media blocked. Lawyers blocked. Family allegedly held hostage. Hathras out of bounds. Hathras village, where the alleged gang rape and murder of a 19-year-old took place, sending shockwaves across the nation, is a virtual fortress. Pushing and jostling, the Trinamool Congress leaders trying to enter Hathras were blocked by Uttar Pradesh police, determined to stop them from meeting the victim's family. The police even manhandled TMC MP Kakuli Ghosh and Pratima Mondal. The lawmakers alleged male police officers misbehaved with the female MPs.
Just let Pratima Mondal, our Lok Sabha MP, the visuals are there. Forget about me being pushed, that's not important. Okay. A male, arrogant UP official pushed her on the ground. You saw that.
Okay, yes.
So listen to her.
We are requesting for 2 MPs to allow for 2 minor MPs. So they are not allowing, not even allowing. That cops didn't say anything. When he requesting, just keep shut his mouth. And when we are trying to go inside, that time he touched me, he pushed me. How dare he?
Enraged over the high-handedness of the cops, the TMC leaders trained guns on the BJP.
देश का लोकतंत्र रहेगी, देश में लोकतंत्र है, लेकिन भाजपा लोकतंत्र को खत्म करना चाहता है। देश के नारी को भाजपा पर हल्ला बोलना चाहिए, क्योंकि माँ बहनें बिटियां खतरे में है भारत में अभी।
The BJP called it a political gimmick by the TMC.
उसका कोई राजनीतिक पहलू नहीं है या उनका कोई दृष्टिकोण है, बस ये दिखाना है और टीवी है, आप लोग हैं कि मैं भी हूं ना, तो टीएमसी वाले यही करने गए हैं कि मैं भी हूं ना.
But it's not just the netas. Hathras is out of bounds for the media as well. Hathras SDM misbehaved with India Today's reporter Chitra Tripathi while she was reporting from ground zero.
कैमरामैन हमारे चले गए, मेरे पास गन माइक था, ये कैमरा था, मैं वहां पर बैठी हुई थी। पूरे लाभ लश्कर के साथ अचानक से पुलिस आ जाती है, फिर हमको यहां से कहा जाता है आप चले जाइए। मैंने कहा कि सर हमारे पास गाड़ी नहीं है, पैदल आई हूं, मेरा कैमरामैन आता है, मैं आप वहां पर चली जाऊंगी। उसके बाद ये अधिकारी बदसलूकी करने लगता है, ये बोलता है कि रात से आप गलत खबर दिखा रही है। जब मैं रात में बाहर बैठी थी, मुझे लग रहा है चुनके से चेहरा ढक के रखा हुआ है, लेकिन मुझे लग रहा है कि रात में वो वहीं पे बैठा था गेट पर, जहां पर मीडिया कर्मियों को रोका गया था।
Facing flak, the police later claimed media would be allowed once the SIT probe is over.
मीडिया को रोकने का किसी का कोई इंटरेस्ट नहीं है। एसआईटी को वर्क उसका हैम्पर ना हो, उसकी इंक्वायरी प्रभावित ना हो, इसके लिए ये रोक लगाई गई।
A botched investigation, victim's family gagged, a midnight cremation by force, and now a complete blockade of Hathras. The big question, what is the UP administration trying to hide? With Chitra Tripathi and Tanushree Pandey, Bureau Report, India Today.
There were protests at Jantar Mantar this evening where you had Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal, CPM General Secretary Sitaram Yechuri and several other opposition leaders. Meanwhile, Priyanka Gandhi Vadra went to the Valmiki temple in the capital. This is on the 2nd of October, the Gandhi Jayanti, the day Mahatma Gandhi's birthday is marked across the country. The biggest question and the only question is, what is the Uttar Pradesh police and government trying to hide? Why should the family members of the victim not be allowed to speak to journalists? Why should they not be allowed to tell their story? Why have their phones been taken away? Why are they being put under pressure? Why are they being intimidated? What's the UP government trying to hide? Joining me on the Newstrack tonight, I want to welcome first, representing the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, its IT chief, Amit Malviya. Squaring off against him, representing the Congress, is Aradhana Mishra. She's with the Uttar Pradesh Congress. With us on this broadcast is a man who understands law and order in Uttar Pradesh. Vikram Singh has been former Director General of Police. We've got Karuna Nandi joining us, leading advocate, and we've got Raghav Chadda of the Aam Aadmi Party. I want to go across to Amit Malviya first, because Mr. Malviya, the one question that everyone's asking across the country is, what is the UP government trying to hide? Now, yes, there are rapes in Uttar Pradesh, as there are in other states of the country, including West Bengal, including Rajasthan. But in this case, we saw the Uttar Pradesh police and local administration cremate this girl at 2:35 a.m. as if she was some terrorist who needed to cremate her without her family getting one last look at their daughter who had died, been murdered, possibly even raped. And now you've got the UP police lay a cordon, make it seem as if this is a fortress where journalists can't go in. The family says their phones have been taken away. The family says their phones are being tapped. They're being kept under surveillance. Why are the victims' families being treated like the culprits in this case, Mr. Malviya?
Well, Rahul, I hope you will have the patience to listen to what I had to say, because if the media has been disallowed, a lot of credit goes to your channel, goes to your group and its coverage. There is an audio of your reporter Tanushri Pandey that has gone viral on social media. Other channels have picked it up and are showing how your channel has swooped down on Hathras and is misreporting. Your reporter can be heard in that audio clip tutoring the victim's brother on what he should say, what he should not say, suggesting that he come up with leading statements, asking him questions about the video of the mother and the victim, the first videos that were taken immediately after this crime was reported, as something that they should move away from and stick to the position that they have taken now. So clearly the media, particularly your group, does not have much of a track record to speak about the media's conduct per se. Number two, there are several evidences, including the autopsy report that has come from the Aligarh hospital and then subsequently from Safdarjung. Both these reports seem to suggest that there was no rape. There were contradictory statements filed by the victim's family. I don't know what their compulsions are, but clearly the first statement said that there was an attempt to strangulate and there was one person involved. Subsequently, more people were named and an element of sexual assault was also incorporated. Therefore, this is clearly a matter of investigation. The cops will prevent the evidences and the court will look at it and opine.
Can I hold you there, because that audio clip that you talk about, one second, because you've said certain things, Rahul, I need to put them in context. Yes, I must be allowed to counter and I will come back to you. I will come back to you, Amit.
Let me make my point.
One second, you've made more than a point. I want to answer that before we go ahead, which is very simple. Our reporter is on the ground trying to get a story. Your government and your police, Mr. Malviya, is trying to stop journalists from doing their job and from reporting on this story. I want to ask you this question. Why is the UP police and the local administration tapping the phones of journalists? Let's for a moment say that what you're saying is correct, which it isn't, because I heard that clip and she says, can you record a video and can you send it across to us? Whatever you've said to Priyanka Gandhi Vadra in the video that she's put out, can you record something on similar lines? And why is she having to plead with the family to send the victim, to send the video across to us? Because you and your government and your police, Mr. Malviya, is stopping journalists from doing their job. If you have nothing to hide, why does the family need to sneak a video out? Why can't journalists just go in and speak to the family members? And why are the phones of journalists being tapped, Mr. Malviya?
Look, Rahul, merely raising your voice is not going to change the reality.
Just answer my questions.
Listen to what I have to say. Don't interrupt me again till I finish. Your journalist is also on record saying, मुझे पता है आपको फंसाने की कोशिश हो रही है, लेकिन हम आपके साथ खड़े हैं, चिंता मत करिए. Is she reporting a story or is she the story? Is she reporting the version of what happened or is she reporting the version of Aaj Tak in India Today? My question to you is very simple. If she knew of the first video where the mother actually admits that there was an attempt to strangulate the girl by this boy called Sandeep, who's from the upper caste, why is it that the India Today group and Aaj Tak did not show it? And why is it your journalist asking the victim's brother about that tape and not reporting it? Why is she saying that he must stick to the subsequent charges made? Do you think there is nothing wrong with that?
I'll tell you what, whatever I need to do. One second, Mr. Malviya, because you can't have a diatribe which is one way and you can say what you want. In fact, I knew that you might pull this stunt. You haven't answered why you are tapping the phones of journalists. That's a very serious charge you need to respond to. I want to play out a clip because a website which leans towards the government received a leaked audio conversation which clearly has UP government officials recording telephone calls of journalists and then leaking them to media that leans their way instead of answering questions. And I want to play out one clip from that leaked audio which we found out from a website which is completely aligned with the government of the day, which leaked it out. How they got this? That's a bigger question that needs to be asked. Why are journalist telephones being recorded, Mr. Malviya? You need to answer that question. But since you've asked questions about what our reporter was doing, let me just play out a quick excerpt of that.
Can I come in there?
Let's
listen. No, listen.
हमें बताया जा रहा है कि फैमिली ने मारा है, फैमिली पे डालने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. अब संदीप
जी,
तुम ही लोग का साथ है बस. देखो हम अभी तक खड़े हैं, बिल्कुल पिट रहे हैं, अभी डंडे खाए हैं.
मैम पीछे नहीं हटेंगे क्योंकि हमारी बहन मारी गई है मैम.
बिल्कुल, मुझे तो पता है संदीप, ये तो मैं तुम्हारी बहन हूँ यार. मैं तो पूरा समझ रही हूँ. पर संदीप एक मुझे बात बताओ. अभी ना पिताजी का एक वीडियो आया है. प्रियंका गांधी ने अभी पिताजी का एक वीडियो ट्वीट किया है जिसमें पिताजी बोल रहे हैं कि ये जो कल जो हमको वीडियो कॉन्फ्रेंसिंग के लिए बुलाया गया है, ये पूरा हमको सिर्फ प्रेशराइज करने के लिए बुलाया गया है.
जी, प्रेशराइज करने के लिए इन्होंने बुलाया था. और वो
बोला है, ऐसा पिताजी ने बोला है.
हाँ, बोल नहीं पा रहे थे तो उस टाइम वो धमकी दे रखी है मैम. जिन्होंने तो पापा हमारे की स्थिति तुमने देखी होगी.
नहीं, मुझे बताओ कि नहीं तो पर सच में बताया तुमको पिताजी ने कि वहाँ धमकी वहाँ क्या धमकाने के लिए बुलाया था?
अभी बताया उन्होंने दोपहर में करेंगे, ऐसे बताया कि घर पर.
सुनो संदीप मेरे लिए एक काम कर दो भाई, प्लीज कर दो एक काम. और मैं तुम्हें वादा कर रही हूँ कि मैं यहाँ से हिलूंगी नहीं जब तक तुम लोग नहीं बोलोगे कि इंसाफ नहीं मिला है. तुमने एक काम करो, पिताजी का ना एक छोटा सा, पिताजी का ऑलरेडी देखो वीडियो बाहर आ ही चुका है, ठीक है. प्रियंका गांधी ने ट्वीट कर दिया है, उस वीडियो को सबने ऑलरेडी उठा दिया है. मेरे को हाथ जोड़ के विनती है संदीप, पिताजी का ना एक छोटा सा वीडियो बना लो जहाँ पिताजी बोल रहे हैं कि हाँ मुझ पे बहुत प्रेशर था ये स्टेटमेंट देने के लिए कि मैं सेटिस्फाइड हूँ, संतुष्ट हूँ कार्रवाई से, और हमको जांच चाहिए क्योंकि हमारी बेटी मरी है, हमारी बेटी को हमें देखने भी नहीं दिया, बिना देखे दफनाए दिया. जो भी आप बोल रहे हो ना कि पिताजी बोल रहे हैं कि बहुत प्रेशर किया है, संदीप प्लीज एक वीडियो बना के मुझे भेज दो. संदीप तुम बैठे हो पिताजी के साथ, सिर्फ तुम ही कर सकते हो. 5 मिनट लगेगा, एक वीडियो जल्दी से बनाओ और सिर्फ मुझको भेज दो. कब कर पाओगे?
ठीक है मैम, मैं अभी करवा देता हूँ पापा को.
हाँ, कुछ भी देखो, उनको डरने की अब ना कोई बात. अब तो देखो संदीप, डर के तो अब क्या करना है, हो गया ना अब तो जो होना. इससे तो क्या करेंगे, हमें मुझे मार देंगे, कल तुम्हें मार देंगे, परसों क्या करना भी है अब ऐसे जी के. इतने डर में डरने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है, हम लोग खड़े. हाँ बताओ.
इन्होंने घर में पुलिस लगा दी, एकदम छत पे बैठे हैं. कोई
मुझे पता है संदीप, और तुम टेंशन मत.
She's pleading with Sandeep. She's trying to convince him to give a video of the father along the lines of what he's already said, which is already in the public domain. Sandeep talks about how his family is under pressure, that there's police sitting on the rooftop, that their phones are under surveillance. Mr. Malviya, why are the telephones of journalists in our country being tapped? Why are these telephone calls being leaked to media that favors the government of the day? I think there are some very serious questions you Amit Malviya need to answer.
Look, Rahul, first of all, I am not quite sure if your allegations that the government of the day or the UP government is tapping journalists' phone is right. Because today, every phone has a recording device, and for all you know, it may have come from somewhere else.
No,
so
may have come from where? One second. This has been run by a website that leans very squarely towards your government, works in close tandem with your cell, and now you're telling us that they got this. How did they get this? How did they get this? Can you please explain that? If, for example, this is on Sandeep's phone, why has the police in Uttar Pradesh taken away Sandeep's phone? Is he the victim? Is he the terrorist? Is he the accused? He is the grieving brother of a girl who's been raped and murdered. You need to answer, why are phones of journalists being recorded, Mr. Malviya?
Well, Rahul, if you're done feeling outraged, let's get on to the discussion.
No, just answer my question. Why are telephone records? Why are telephones of journalists being recorded, sir? How are these being leaked? How did they manage to get their hands towards media that leans very squarely towards you? Just respond to my question, sir.
Well, you know, there are times when people accuse you of leaning to the government as well.
No, which is fine. I don't care about that. That doesn't matter.
That does not make you art porn.
No, doesn't matter. You answer my question. Why was a journalist's telephone recorded? Just respond to my question, Mr. Malviya.
Well,
why is your government in Uttar Pradesh recording the telephones of journalists? How is this okay? The family is on record saying they're under surveillance. Their phones have been seized. Why have their telephones been seized, Mr. Malviya?
Well, Rahul, you're smarter than that. You know that there is a process to record and tap phone calls, right? You can't be outraging and you can't be making these rhetorical questions just to save
If there is a process to record telephone calls, please tell me what is the process under which section of which Indian law of leaking those telephone calls when an SIT is underway to people outside those who are in the investigation team? How did that telephone call get leaked, in which case?
Rahul, you're assuming that the government has recorded the call. You forget that we're living in a high-paced tech era where every phone has a recorder, and there are ways that the recording find their way.
Okay. So there are two people on the call. One of them is our journalist. One of them is the victim's family. One second, sir. One of them is our journalist. One of them is the victim's brother. Now, our journalist most certainly didn't leak this. She doesn't have a recording. In fact, Tanushri joins us live, and I want to welcome her at this time because Amit Malviya is with us and Tanushri joins us from the ground. And on the other side, you've got the victim's brother, in which case I ask you, our journalist didn't give it, that I'm pretty certain of. I investigated this case myself. Secondly, if you got this from the victim's brother, why is the victim's brother's phone under surveillance? Is he the victim's brother? Is he the accused's brother? You've got section 144 in place, just 2 kilometers away from where this ghastly gang rape has happened. A whole congregation of the accused family and their friends and their community members took place in complete brazen violation of section 144. Why were they not stopped? Why was there no fortress there, Mr. Malviya? There are some very serious questions you need to answer.
Well, Rahul, first of all, don't scream. I don't like conversations which go above a certain decibel level, so let's keep it civil. As far as the recording is concerned, well, the recording is out. Your journalist is seen.
So there are only two phones. One is our journalist.
Don't scream, Rahul.
I'm not screaming. I'm very calm.
Don't scream.
I'm very calm. Mr. Malviya, I'm very calm. I hope you calm down as well. I'm very calm.
If you scream, we are not having this conversation. So calm down. Don't raise your voice with me.
I'm not raising my voice.
Now we'll have the conversation. Now let me finish what I have to say.
Why was the phone call leaked? How did it get leaked? Okay, let's assume it's not from our journalist. Let's assume that it's from Sandeep's phone. Why was Sandeep's phone leaked? Is this not a matter which should be investigated?
Listen, Rahul, if you allow me to speak and stop screaming, we'll have a conversation. Otherwise, you can continue with this discussion with your other panelists. Now, listen to what I have to say. The fact is that this conversation was had. It's a 16-minute long conversation. It is out there in the public domain. It doesn't matter which channel, which website is carrying it. India's leading Hindi channel, Republic, is carrying this story. If you think they are aligned to the government, good luck to you. If you think that your journalist has had a kosher conversation, good luck to you. Because it is out there in social media, everybody is listening.
Okay, so when I speak to you or you speak to somebody else, can those calls also get leaked? How does a journalist call get leaked? Why are telephones being tapped? If this is, and you said that there's elaborate process, yes, there most certainly is elaborate process, but there is no process to leak those calls, Mr. Malviya.
Rahul, We are in a difficult situation here. A young girl has lost her life, and there is a section of media that has swooped down on Hathras and is trying to give their version of the story. Do you realize this is a criminal act? Do you realize you are playing with the emotions of the family?
What is a criminal act? What is a criminal act? Intimidating the victim's family, is that, Mr. Malviya, the criminal act? Leaking telephone calls of journalists, is that the criminal act? Denying justice, allowing section 144 to be violated by the family members of the accused, while you impose section 144 and don't allow others in? Please tell me, Mr. Malviya, what is the criminal act?
If your journalist insists on putting out their version of what they see as truth,
so we are
then
hearing
there is
from the
something wrong
family.
with the reporting.
It's not their version, our version.
You are
we are
not.
Reporting on
you
what
are not.
your SDM is saying, what the joint magistrate is saying, what the DM is saying, and this is the truth which is inconvenient to you. You aren't being able to spin the narrative. It's biting you, it's pinching you, which is why now you are trying to shoot the messenger. Which is why now you're trying to find fault with a journalist who's doing her job. She's insistent, as she should be. She's trying to get an interview, which should have been allowed. If you hadn't stopped the media from going in, she would have gone in and done an interview the way it should be done. Why are journalists being stopped from entering the village of Bulgari in Hathras? Can you answer that, Mr. Malviya?
You know, Rahul, if anybody is watching this conversation, they know exactly that why you're so worked up. The fact is that you just ran a selective excerpt of that conversation, which was convenient to you. You did not run the part where your journalist is actually asking the victim's brother about the confessional video of the mother and also the victim immediately after the crime happened, where she said that there was an attempt to strangulate. And then she says, stick to the position that you have taken now. Don't you think that's leading the victim's family to a certain direction because it suits your story?
So she's telling them that whatever you've got done. One second.
Reporting what you want to show.
Okay, let's assume you don't like the story. That allows you to tap, leak the telephone records of journalists. Let's assume she did a story which you don't like. And that means you can tap their phones, leak their calls, and put them out on social media. Are we a democracy? Are we a banana republic?
Listen, Rahul, you of all people should not be talking about democracy and banana republic. You went to the JNU campus and stung 18-year-old boys, and the same journalist who was tutoring the victim's brother was seen tutoring the SFI VP there. So let's not preach here, keep your sermons for somebody else who doesn't know exactly what your track record is. You also ran the Gonda story and fell flat because you could not prove the crux of your story. So
no, one second. What is it that we could not prove? Mr. Malviya, you are tapping and leaking the telephone records of journalists.
Let's get over this
one second. There is no sermonizing here. No, sir, this is no sermonizing. In fact, I want to welcome all our other guests and see what they have to say, because what we have over here is an alleged case of the UP police tapping the telephones of journalists, leaking them out, putting them out on social media. Is this the way a democratic country behaves? Let's assume she did something which is out of line for a second, which is something we will investigate and we will deal with separately. That is not something which can be put out on social media because it's a private call. And if those calls are being recorded, as Mr. Malviya says, as per due process, that process does not allow for those calls to be leaked in public. That's the reality. You just said it, that there is a process in which calls are tapped and recorded. That process doesn't allow for calls to be leaked to the media.
There are a lot of technology solutions that allow for these calls to be recorded.
No, sir, you said that there is a process in which calls are tapped and that process is being violated.
If you make this allegation, you have to also substantiate it.
I don't have to substantiate it. I'm asking you, how did the call get leaked? Because there are only two telephones. One second. Mr. Malviya, there are only two people who are on the call. One is our reporter, Tanushri joins us. Let's listen to her. Tanushri, do you have a recording system on your phone? Did you record this call? Is this a call that got recorded on Sandeep's phone? Explain to us the charges that are being thrown your way and the contents of this call and the effort that you were making. Tanushri.
Rahul, I really want to start with saying something to Mr. Malviya. Sir, my camera person and I have been here on the ground. Our cars have been stopped. Your the administration, the cops on the ground have told us several times, shut your cameras, हम तुम्हें देख लेंगे, सवाल हमसे पूछ रहे हो हम देख लेंगे. Mr. Malviya, we have never made a fuss about it. I have never even mentioned it because we understand the pressure on everybody. Investigation will take its own course. Whatever we are seeing from our own eyes, whatever our cameras are recording, only those facts are being reporting. We have been reporting only those facts, sir. And the second thing about the phone recording, Rahul, I do not have a recorder on my phone. I checked with Sandeep. Sandeep doesn't have a recorder on his phone. So I have absolutely no clue. His phone also, I spoke to him this morning, and while I was speaking to Sandeep, Sandeep's phone was snatched away. And ever since then, his phone is switched off. And then obviously we got a bite that all the phones have been confiscated. So Rahul, I have absolutely no clue how this recording came to the public domain, but I spoke to the brother yesterday, and all we did and we have been doing since 4 days, Mr. Malviya, is honest journalism, because that is what we do on India Today and Aaj Tak. I spoke to the brother. All I asked him is that, did your father give any statement like this? Ms. Priyanka Gandhi has tweeted a video of your father saying that he is under pressure. Sandeep, did your father give any statement like this? He clearly told me, yes, my father gave a statement. I counter-questioned him that then why did your father not tell the media yesterday? He told me, ma'am, we are under a lot of pressure. He was scared. When the media left, he told us the entire thing. All I asked him to do, because the administration have locked us outside, they have restrained us. I have absolutely no means to get access to the family. I asked him to please record a video of the father, of whatever allegations you are making, record a video of it and send it across to us. That is our job, Mr. Malviya, and I don't think so there is
and I also want to show our viewers, because I told you at the start of the show, and I think Mr. Malviya needs to listen to this very carefully, what the family actually says. And one of the reasons why they're so rattled about the fact that what the family is saying may come out is because it's uncomfortable. They don't want to listen to it, because the truth, I don't know what it is that they're trying to hide. Why is it that this poor little girl who was murdered in such a ghastly fashion was cremated in the dead of the night? But what is it that the family is saying? Remember, there's a full fortress around Bhulgadi village. Journalists aren't allowed in. So we tied up with one of the locals who was from that village. We requested him to go in. He, on his phone, recorded an interview which he sent back to us. This is exclusively available with India Today. And this is what Mr. Malviya and anybody else who believes that the victim's family is the problem here. Their phones being snatched away, the victim's family under surveillance, the sister-in-law, the father on camera talking about being threatened, being intimidated, constant linkages with the compensation that they're being given, as if that they should be grateful that their daughter's been given compensation after her death. Listen now to what the family says, and Mr. Malviya, especially you, I'd like you very, very carefully to listen to the truth your government in Uttar Pradesh, the Uttar Pradesh police, is trying to hide.
वो बोलते ही नहीं है सही से, वो ना छींक के बोलते हैं, अलग डांट मतलब कि डांट देते हैं, चुप कर देते हैं कि आप चुप रहिए, हम उनसे बात कर रहे हैं। वो सिर्फ जो पिताजी है ना उनसे ही बात करते हैं।
पूरी तरह से प्रेशर बना रहे हैं ये लोग के डीएम साहब, एडीएम साहब और एसपी साहब भी पूरा तरह से हमारे घर पे 24 घंटे एकदम जैसे ताक रहे, जैसे हम लोग ही अपराधी हैं, इस तरह से हम लोग को ड्यू कर रहे हैं। और हमने अपने बहन की डेड बॉडी के लिए बोला, तो बोले अगर ये बताइए अगर उसको कोरोना से मर जाती तो आपको कुछ मिलता, ऐसे मुआवजा मिलता, ऐसे हमसे भी ऐसे कोई भी हमारे यहाँ से कोई बोलता है तो हमारी बहन बेटी को बोलती तो उनको चुप करा देती, आप चुप रहिए, हमें बात भी करनी दीजिए।
अपनी पोस्ट बता रहे हैं, हम आज इतनी बड़े उस पे बैठे हैं, किस वजह से बैठे, 1 करोड़ की आबादी में ऐसे भी बैठे हैं, तो इतने पढ़े लिखे हैं, आज 8 साल की हम सर्विस में हैं, हमारे से ज़्यादा तुम लोगों को ज्ञान है। पोस्टमार्टम का मतलब समझते हो क्या? बॉडी देख सकते थे तुम लोग, क्यों नहीं देख सकते? एक माँ से ज़्यादा बच्चे के लिए क्या बड़ी चीज़ होती है बताओ? बच्चा कितना इम्पोर्टेंट होता है माँ के लिए, माँ ही जान सकती है ना, हम लोग तो नहीं जान सकते।
को भी नहीं दिखाया, और रात में क्या कहते हैं अपने आप ही क्या कहते उन्होंने मट्टी,
ये चारों मौजूद थे, ये डीएम, एसडीएम, एडीएम,
इतना प्रेशर था
और एसपी, चारों मौजूद थे उस टाइम में जब इनको डेड बॉडी लेके गया था। जो कांस्टेबल उन्होंने उठा के पटक दिया, और मेरे ससुर जी उनके छाती पर लात भी मारी उन कांस्टेबल ने, उनका दर्द भी हो रहा है अभी भी। तो बताइए ये कैसे हमारा न्याय हो रहा है? ये हमारा न्याय नहीं हो रहा।
क्या डीएम साहब 25 लाख में अपनी लड़की की बॉडी बेच देंगे? आप बताइए। डीएम बोलते हैं एक मकान में 25 लाख रुपए देंगे, इतना तुम्हारे लिए मुआवजे के लिए कम है? हम लोग ये सब कुछ छोड़ के जाएंगे? अगर जो डीएम साहब की अगर बेटी के साथ ऐसा हुआ हो तो क्या वो बर्दाश्त कर पाते? वो बोलते हैं कि ईंट लगने की वजह से उनकी गर्दन की हड्डी टूटी है, रीढ़ की हड्डी टूटी नहीं है, कोई चोट नहीं है, गले में चोट की वजह से वो लड़की मर गई। तो इतने दिन हॉस्पिटल में क्यों रख रखा उन्हें? बताइए। बिना किसी उसके ब्रेक हुआ नहीं, कुछ नहीं हुआ, तो उसकी वजह क्या थी मौत की? फिर बॉडी क्यों नहीं दिखाई दी? हम लोग चीख के
और ये लोग मिले हुए कल एडीएम साहब जो हमारे अपराधी उनके माँ बापों से मिल रहे हैं, उनसे ये उनसे कर रहे हैं कि आप चिंता न करें, हम तुम्हारे पूरी तरह साथ हैं, पूरी मदद करेंगे। जो हमारे विपक्ष पार्टी है, जो लड़के अपराधी उनके माँ बापों से बात कर रहे हैं जाके ये लोग, हम तुम्हारे साथ हैं, हर चीज़ की कोई चिंता, हम पूरा उन पर दबाव बना रहे हैं।
और हाँ, कोई अधिकारी भी कहा तो वहाँ से बात करिए कि बॉडी सुरक्षित है या नहीं है। जहाँ पोस्टमार्टम हुआ है हमें नहीं मालूम है कि कहा तो बॉडी वही थी या
आपको ये मालूम नहीं कि बॉडी कौन सी थी? वो बॉडी लेके आए या कुछ और लेके आए? उसमें आपने चेहरा नहीं देखा ना आपने कुछ देखा। बॉडी को केवल ये देखा है कि यहाँ पर कोई पुतला जैसा कोई चीज आ चुकी है यहाँ पर। आपने केवल इतना ही देखा, अपनी बेटी का कोई चेहरा या कोई कुछ नहीं देख पाया।
शमशान में तो गया थे।
उसकी जो डॉट बोर्ड थे वो ऐसे जला दी जैसे कोई लावारिस जला देती है, ऐसे साथ से पेट्रोल छिड़क के, डीजल छिड़क के। और वहाँ पर जो पुलिस के जो अधिकारी कुछ लोग थे वहाँ पर हंस भी रहे थे उस समय।
ठीक है, तो कोई बात नहीं, वो यहाँ पर बड़ी सुरक्षा के हिसाब से छुपा के करके हम यहाँ पर आया हूँ। मैं भीम आर्मी से मंडल संगठन सचिव कमल सिंह वालिया मेरा नाम है, और ऐसे ही आता रहूँगा, आपके बयान लेता रहूँगा। जय भीम।
Okay, so you just heard for the first time an interaction with the family of the victim. They're saying that they're being threatened, they're being intimidated, that the local officials seem on the side of the accused, and that they feel very vulnerable. And I want to, in complete disclosure, let every single person who's watching know that this is an interview done by one of the local activists of the Bhim army that went in, recorded this and sent it out. Why did this have to be done in this fashion? Because the UP government won't allow journalists to go in. Now, why is this being treated as if we're trying to go across the LOC or the LAC, we're trying to enter enemy territory? Bhulgadi is a village in India, a country that is free, that is democratic, where the right to report still exists. You cannot deny journalists the right to speak to the family members, no matter what the family members say and no matter how inconvenient the government of the day might think. What they're saying is you cannot shut their voice down, and most certainly you cannot record the telephone calls of journalists. I want to go across to the guests who are joining us on this broadcast. We've got Vikram Singh, former Director General of Uttar Pradesh. We've got Aradhana Mishra, spokesperson of the Congress. We've got Karuna Nandi of the Supreme Court, senior advocate there. And we've got Amit Malviya from the BJP. I want to go across first and foremost for a legal perspective to Karuna Nandi. Journalists being stopped from entering Hathras, and now telephone calls of journalists being recorded and leaked, put out on social media because those conversations are conversations the powers that be don't like. What are you making of the saga that's playing out at Hathras? Karuna? Okay, you're on mute, Karuna. Do you want to just unmute that line? Okay, give me a moment, I'll fix that. Till then, let me go across to Vikram Singh, former Director General of Police in Uttar Pradesh. Mr. Singh, what do you make of the fact that journalists are being stopped by a police force that you once commanded from going into the village of Hathras as if this is some kind of area infested with terrorists who will say something and blow off and it will be a national calamity? Why is your force, the force that you led with so much pride, doing this, and do you approve of it, Mr. Singh?
Rahul, I find this totally unacceptable. I'm given to understand as the weak defense that they gave during the course of the interaction with Tanushree that there is pandemic in the area and they're doing it. If you're so confident of your homework, you should have passed orders under curfew orders under section 144 of the CRPC prohibiting the entry of each and every person. You did not do that. imposition of selective 144 CRPC, allowing a neighboring village to have a congregation and allowing almost an unaghoshit curfew in this part of the village is just not acceptable. And also, the response of the police seems to be knee-jerk and whimsical and is not on the lines which would be acceptable in the rule of law. These would constitute an offence under 339, 340 wrongful restraint and wrongful confinement of the family. Seizing of the telephone would impinge upon the fundamental rights of the family, YD Articles 19 and...
No, one second. We've heard from the family that their phones have been snatched away. You know, now, three things could have happened, Mr. Malviya. One, Tanushree Pandey, our journalist's phone was tapped. We'd like to know why and how. Two, the telephone records of Sandeep were tapped. Why is the victim's family being treated like an accused? Why is their phone being tapped? Point number two. Point number three, they snatched Sandeep's phone. As Mr. Malviya says, many phones have recording devices. Tanushree says her phone doesn't, and that's available for investigation. But Sandeep's phone does. It's possible. In which case, why has his phone been taken away by the local authorities? Why are his calls then being leaked outside of the probe? Do you approve of this, Mr. Vikram Singh?
Not at all. There is a provision and there's a system of how to monitor phones. YD Section 3/5 of Indian Telegraphs Act, read with the Supreme Court directives on Kuldeep Singh and Justice Sagir Ahmed in matter of PUCL versus Union of India and Amar Singh case. It cannot be like that. And leaking of this conversation, whoever has done it has signed his own warrant himself, because this is a breach of privacy and breach of protocol, and whoever has done that has a lot of explaining to do before the law enforcement agencies.
What enforcing? So the person from whom Mr. Malviya got this call, which he put out on social media, what is the kind of explanation that you believe that this person needs to do, Mr. Vikram Singh? What are the tenets of law that have been violated by this person, sir?
The tenet of law is the violation of the secrecy that one is supposed to enjoy, because this is supposed to be a secret document only to be made privy to the Director General of Police of Uttar Pradesh, the Intelligence Chief and the Home Secretary of Uttar Pradesh, if there is a tapping. And if it is compromised, whoever was responsible for real-time tapping and otherwise has a lot of it, because the compromise has happened, then this is go for a reverse engineering. Something like this happened in Delhi about 10 years ago, you may recall, and the special branch not only uncovered the case, but also sent those people to jail as well. This is a serious matter, and leakage of tapped conversation a case has to be registered under the IT Act, and those responsible for the selective or whatever leakage, this is totally unprofessional and uncalled for.
Unprofessional, uncalled for, unwarranted, illegal, coming from a highly respected former Director General of the Uttar Pradesh Police. Mr. Malviya would like to mull over that. Very calm, just keep no raising your voice, very, very calm, sticking to the facts. Karuna Nandi, what are you making of this? Telephone calls of journalists being tapped, being leaked, even if they aren't being tapped and came from the phone of Sandeep, that being leaked while in SIT, which is free, fair, thorough, is currently supposed to be investigating this case. The family tells us their phones have been snatched, they're under surveillance, they're being threatened and intimidated.
Let's look at the legal provisions that have been violated. In the People's Union of Civil Liberties versus the Union of India, the Supreme Court said the right to hold a telephone conversation in the privacy of one's own home or office without interference can certainly be claimed as the right to privacy, right? So let's be very clear that this is something that is squarely within that right. Now, that is a constitutional provision. Let's look at this more concretely. Either it's a private citizen that has hacked the phone and has stolen the information. So there's two violations here. One is the hacking. So under the IT Act, that is a violation. Secondly, it is also the theft of information. Theft, right? Now, I appreciated what the former DGP was saying, that if you are not acting in accordance with law, then you are acting in violation, right? So not only do we see a complete breakdown of law and order, but we see serious criminality being committed by the UP police. And let's be clear, it's not just in this case, because we have seen assault on Dalit women in, a few years ago in Lakhimpur Kheri, in the Kuldeep Singh case, where the father of the Dalit girl was killed in police custody, and Kuldeep Singh, who was a former MLA of the BJP, of the ruling party, was convicted finally. But after huge media scrutiny after huge media outrage. You have the Balrampur incident where exactly the same thing happened. The destruction of evidence contrary to Section 201 of the IPC, they burnt the body in the middle of the night. So we have huge criminality here. But what is very interesting to me, Rahul, is that you have Mr. Malviya, the BJP spokesperson, who is, can I be heard?
Yeah, go on.
The BJP spokesperson, he says that, and I actually noted it down, he said that India Today and presumably other channels who are in this difficult situation, placing stories that are, contrary to the narrative that the BJP seeks to purvey, that this is criminal. He used that word. I don't know if you noticed. He said that this is criminal. And this is very interesting. Because on the one hand, there's all this criminality that is being purveyed quite terrifyingly for the family, for your extremely courageous journalist who is doing her job, Tanushree Pandey, and other people on the ground. But to hear that the criminality is on your part and that the instruments of the state, whether it is the police, whether it is the DM, whether it is the SP, indeed the entire state machinery is basically committing criminal acts, is something that the entire country has to be extremely...
No, the victim's family is being treated like the criminals. They're being locked up in their house. They've got cops inside their house. They're not being allowed to go out. Journalists aren't being allowed to meet them. I want to go across to Raghav Chadha because we had the Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal at Jantar Mantar. What took him there? Is this an opportunity to attack the government? And is that what takes you to Jantar Mantar? And what are you making of love affair, the phone tapping of journalists? The government now not just tapping but leaking telephone calls of journalists, and that whole call is out. You can listen to it and you can make up your own mind on whether you think she's being insistent, she's being dogged, as she should. And she needs to be dogged and insistent and persistent because she's being stopped by the local police from going in and doing the interview in the manner that she should be allowed to. Raghav Chadha.
Well, Rahul, first of all, it is for the first time that one is being given to understand that an investigation is taking place where it is the victim's family that has been put in house arrest. Their phones have been snatched and all their phone records, etc. are being, looked into, and their phones are being tapped. Usually, not usually, I think in all cases, this usually happens in a criminal justice system when the investigation kicks in with the accused and those who are complicit with the accused and not with the victims. And we are given to understand that media is not being permitted to reach out to the family or reach the house where the family lives. And the entire family has been put in house arrest, is being threatened, is being intimidated, is being repressed merely because they wish to conduct an independent, the so-called independent investigation. If you were to look at, and you have said this on a number of occasions, if you were to look through the chronology of the events, you have the director of the information department saying that this is fake news, no rape ever happened. You have the SP saying that rape never happened, it was mere strangulation. You have the ADG of the police who says that the neck and the spinal cord of the victim was not broken. It is a hoax. You have no less than the DM walking into the house of the victim, threatening them, kicking the tayaji of the victim and saying that, look, media walas will go in a couple of days. You and I will still be around. So beware of what you say. And on top of it, you have the Thanedar, the station house officer of the police station, who burns the body of the deceased in the dead of the night. This shows, and Rahul, coupled with the fact that your journalist's phone is being tapped, the victim's family phone is being tapped, brings me to three very clean, irrefutable, indisputable conclusions. Conclusion number one, while 4 men raped the daughter, Hathras' daughter, India's daughter, it is the entire administration of Uttar Pradesh that has repeatedly gang raped physically, mentally and emotionally the entire family of the victim. Number two, there seems to be a complete breakdown of law and order. Law and order seems to be breakdown, and the way phones are being recorded, I have no hesitation in saying that there is a constitutional breakdown of machinery. There is a breakdown of constitutional machinery, and certainly the higher ups, the president, the Honorable Supreme Court must look into this matter and take suo motu cognizance. And lastly, it is not the DM. I see that every person is saying the DM did this, the DM did this, the DM said that, the DM said that. It is not the DM, but the CM who has done this. The DM is merely the symptom. The disease lies with the Chief Minister.
Mr. Malviya, you want to respond to this? Why is the victim's family being treated like they're the accused, like they're on trial, they're under surveillance, their phones have been snatched away, cops are hanging on their rooftop, while family members and friends of the accused are doing mass congregations at a time when your government, sir, claims to have invoked Section 144, which forbids the assembly and gathering of more than 4 people, Mr. Malviya?
You know, Rahul, the first thing that I want to clarify, that a lot of words were thrown around like gang rape, broken spine, cut or chopped tongue. The autopsy report, both at the Aligarh hospital and then at Safdarjung in Delhi, point to the fact that her bone in the neck was broken because of the strangulation, which led to injury in the spine, which led to paralysis and trauma, which eventually led to her death. No case for rape or gang rape was made out in the autopsy report. And that's exactly what the DM or the SP or whoever is being quoted said. Clearly, the police have to rely on what the medical agencies tell them. I am quite astonished that even media channels like yourselves have been bandying the word gang rape as if it's really something that you should use it whenever it's convenient. I mean, it's abhorrent. You could have done that till the report hadn't come, but after the report has come up...
Have you heard of the significance of a dying declaration? That girl is on... One second. When this incident happened, no medical examination was done at that moment. For more than 10 days, no medical examination was done, and Karuna Nandi wants to come in on how whether
Rahul,
within 72 hours, if a medical examination doesn't happen, it becomes very difficult to establish whether there is rape or not. Secondly, the postmortem report which I have studied says that no semen has been found in the lady's private parts. Now, just because, and under the Nirbhaya rape laws, regardless of whether semen is found or not, any form of penetration is taken as evidence to suggest that there is rape. And that girl's dying declaration, I'm going to ask my producers to pull it out. I will play it out to refresh Mr. Malviya's memory and everybody else who's watching. And
Rahul,
this is where Karuna Nandi wants to come in. One second. Can Karuna Nandi come in and counter what you're saying? And then very calmly, very gently, and very keen on listening to you, Mr. Malviya, we'll come back to you just in a moment. Karuna. Karuna, I think you've turned yourself on mute again.
It's not me, it's your...
Okay, you're fine now. You're fine now. Go on.
Mr. Malviya, I'll be as gentle as possible because I can tell that your government is sensitive to criticism. Let's be clear. What does the law say? The law says that the dying declaration of a victim of rape can be sufficient to convict the rapist. So it's not that there are lots of pieces of evidence and this is the, and the autopsy report is the main evidence. No. Under law, the way it works is that, let us be clear, that after someone is raped, if they have a shower, if even 1 day is spent in acting in a normal way, then there's highly likely that there will be no evidence of semen. So the point is that the evidence of semen is neither here nor there. However, the evidence of the victim, whether it's in a dying declaration or whether it's in a 164 statement, that is taken forward and then she's consistent during trial, is sufficient to convict the accused. What interests me is, in particular, is the fact that you seem to be going to bat for the accused, and that is something that is quite curious to me. Because what you are doing is that you are going to bat for the accused completely contrary to law. You are here not as Amit Malviya, you are here as the BJP. You are here as a spokesperson of the government, which is responsible for the prosecution of this gang rape. And you are also here as the representative of the central government, which has possibly tapped the phone of the journalists, hugely invading the rights of the media, which is at a heightened level from the speech rights of a regular person, right? There are particular processes that you have to go through. You basically have to, what is the process? That the Home Ministry has to go to a review committee, and then that review committee has to...
Can I play out that dying declaration, please, so that Mr. Malviya and everybody else can hear it? And the significance of the dying declaration, Supreme Court laws have very clearly, Supreme Court orders have made very clear that a dying declaration can be taken as evidence, and under the Nirbhaya laws and under the current rape laws of this country, and Karuna Nandi can correct me if I am wrong, between what anybody else, the accused family is saying and the victim says, you believe the victim till the time an investigation proves that to be right or wrong, and we wait with a completely open mind on what that investigation will unearth. Meanwhile, listen to that victim's dying declaration.
कब एक बार और रेप करने की कोशिश की थी पहले? अच्छा, इससे पहले रेप करने की कोशिश की थी लेकिन क्या हुआ? भाग आए थे। कुछ हुआ कि नहीं? अच्छा अच्छा, तो रवि कह रहा था कुछ हुआ कि नहीं? हाँ, अच्छा, ये दोनों मिले हुए हैं, तो उस समय तो बच गए आप। फिर उस दिन जिस दिन आपकी चोट लगी है उस दिन रेप हुआ है? अच्छा, दोनों ने किया था, कोई और भी था?
वो दोनों थे और बाकी सब भाग गए थे।
अच्छा, बाकी सब भाग गए थे।
मम्मी को देख के।
जब मम्मी को देख के भाग गए थे, तो आप उस समय होश में थे?
थोड़ा सा होश था।
थोड़ा सा होश था। अच्छा अच्छा, तो रेप हुआ आपके साथ, उसके बाद क्या किया?
मेरी मम्मी ने मुंह में पानी डाला तो कुछ नहीं, क्या हुआ?
Got here the victim alleging on tape that she was raped, and you've got the might of the Uttar Pradesh establishment out to prove that this is not rape. Now I leave it to the conscience of every single person who's watching this broadcast
Rahul,
at this
you'll
time
have
to
to allow me
decide
to answer
what
this.
they think of this. Now I want to quote to you Kushal Rao versus the state of Bombay, and Mr. Malviya, you'll come in on this, on the evidentiary value of a dying declaration. Dying declaration stands on its own footing, cannot be contradicted by reference to extraneous evidence of the witness. It says conviction can be based on the dying declaration after it passes the scrutiny of the court. To convict someone, just the victim's dying declaration by itself is enough. Why are you out to prove that this wasn't rape, and why are you so sure this wasn't rape when I don't know whether this was rape or not, Mr. Malviya? Neither do you. But I am hearing from the victim. India is hearing from the victim. She's speaking. People are listening to her dying declaration, and somehow the Uttar Pradesh government and police seems to have made up its mind that वो झूठ बोल रही है. Why?
You know, Rahul, it's very unfortunate that you are playing this video in a loop. While I understand the frame of mind she must have been at the time when this video was recorded, the fact of the matter is that there are also several videos out there where immediately after the crime happened, she and her mother have been on record saying there was an attempt to strangulate. That statement was subsequently changed. There are videos of that as well. And then comes the final statement of the complaint that they made. And then this video, which you are presenting to your viewers as dying declaration, comes. But the reality is that there are several videos before this one where both the mother and the victim have said that it was an attempt to strangulate her, and there's no mention of
but
rape.
that
or
murder by itself wasn't ghastly enough for you?
Rahul, let me
Mr.
finish,
Malviya, that
please.
murder itself wasn't ghastly enough for you?
Will you let me finish?
I will.
And not try and sensationalize this? I said when I started that it's unfortunate that a girl has lost his life, but what is even more unfortunate is the section of media, including your channel and your media group, are trying to sensationalize, swoop down on Hathras and put out your version of the story. Your journalist asked the victim's brother about the first video, which you haven't shown on your program, where the mother says that the girl was tried to be strangulated. You're not showing that.
Sir,
maybe you
this
don't
incident
like that
happened on the
version of
14th
that
of
comment.
September. The mother is telling us that the police didn't even arrange an ambulance, that the girl was lying out in the field. They said, "Aapko jaise leke jana hai, leke chale jao." No, but this is the reality, Mr. Malviya. If this is the manner in which your police force is behaving, you're asking us to believe your police force.
No,
Mr. Malviya, we must speak truth to power. We must be on the side of the victim. The truth must come out. The government cannot get away by trying to browbeat and intimidate the victim's family, by trying to treat the victim's family like they are terrorists, like they're on trial, like they've committed some murder.
If your journalists and media houses like yourselves stopped using this opportunity to peddle half-truths and untruths, we will perhaps have this case solved at the earliest. But if vested interests like yourself and journalists like your reporter tutor the victim's brother,
so what did she say? Can I just play out Tanushree again? Because this is not, she's being persistent, she's being dogged. She's telling the victim's brother, send me a video. Send me the video of whatever you've said. I want to listen to what you're saying. And that is not wrong. And she wouldn't have had to do this, Mr. Malviya, if your police force had allowed journalists to go in and do the interview themselves. Why is our reporter having to find a way of getting a video out? Because your police force would not allow for journalists to go in and do their job.
No business tutoring the victim's brother on what he should say and what he shouldn't.
That video, that audio is out. I think let people decide for themselves. She is telling the victim's brother, send me your video. Say whatever you want, say what you've said, send me the video. In any case, why is the victim's family under surveillance? Why have their phones being snatched away? Why are journalists' phones being tapped, Mr. Malviya? Why are journalists' phones being tapped? Why is the victim under surveillance? The victim's family under surveillance? Why is the victim's family being treated like they're the accused, like they're the ones who went out and committed murder? Are we a functioning democracy? Are we a banana republic? Are we a functioning democracy, Mr. Malviya, or are we a banana republic?
You're at the receiving end of this lapse on behalf of your journalists. Her unethical journalism.
Mr. Malviya, so far,
her unethical behavior.
You are saying that your government has done nothing wrong. That so far every action has been kosher. Now we are being told that action is being taken against local officials. That the Yogi government finally, after embarrassing itself at every turn of this way, right from the very beginning, has now gone out and finally taken action against the SP, the DSP and the inspector who've been suspended in Hathras. So far, and this is what we've been saying, do not take the side of the local officials. What they've done is wrong. Now I'm glad, Mr. Malviya, as we come to the end of the show, your party, your government, which runs India's most populous state of Uttar Pradesh, has realized that what was happening so far was wrong. And that there is no way, no matter what you say, whose calls you leak, whose phones you tap, you put journalists under surveillance, you treat victims' families like they're the accused, like they're the terrorists. In the end, you've had to accept what happened was wrong, totally wrong. We are a functioning democracy. There is freedom to report. There is freedom of speech. We are not a banana republic, and we will not allow our country to be treated like one. On that note, I want to end this show and I want to hand over this conversation live to my colleague,